cheaper to let them, tell them you're free, impose taxes on them, give them a slave labor wages, and just tell them you're free, and then everyone thinks you're free. Yeah, because I can go do what I want as long as you can pay.
Now, what are we going to cover next here? I know we have a lot we want to...
Yeah, I wanted to point out, because you were talking about Admiralty law, in going back 2 seasons now, we had mentioned what Admiralty law, or an indication of what Admiralty law is. Now, this is something that is not official as far as the congressional law, but if you see a flag with a gold fringe trim around it, that is an indication that that court, that institution, is operating under Admiralty or maritime law. And so just so a quick definition, the difference between common law, the law of the land is on the land, and Admiralty law was initially established to do international business on the waterways. First it started off in the oceans, then it moved into the rivers. Now they've actually, according to Jordan Maxwell, put high water marks on every spot in the country. So there is no place, theoretically, that is not covered by Admiralty maritime law.
That's no joke. Serious as a heart attack. Food for thought. Check it out yourself.
And it's strictly laws regarding the transactions of business and the exchange of money. And mostly it's regarding how to take money out of our pockets and put it into the hands of the bankers, those who make the money. I mean, the corporations make tons of it off of us. So, excuse me. Now, we have been going through the chronological history of the New World Order.
Well, we haven't been ranting.
No, we're trying to get out a little more facts. You know, it's one of those...
Well, let's get to it.
Absolutely. Okay, so, you know, it's just I wanted to say, you know, sometimes you got to blow off a little steam about this stuff because it's a little far-fetched, you know, to believe it gets a little bit. Okay, so now we go up to, we're still back in 1948. And we are going to bring out, you know, how some of this confusion has been brought about, how some of the prevailing confusions, and some of it has been brought about through, I think, through this group here. This is...
You mean the church?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? It does kind of have a symbol of a church. That is actually the symbol of what we know as the Fabian Society. Now, I will say one thing about the Fabian Society versus a lot of other organizations. They are openly social. They admit that they are a socialist organization.
Well, they started off anti-Christian, you know, back in, what was it, I got it right here, 1884. You know, people were just done with capitalism and Christianity and disillusioned with it. You know, and so they turned to Fabianism. And would you like me to introduce what that is?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, out of our good friend, who's right here, Ed Whitney, we've had him on the program in the past. You may or may not have seen him. Folks, says right here in his book called The Controllers, Secret Rulers of the World. Here we have, in 1884, the Fabian Society. It was formed in England. Once again, England. What we really want to get into in the future is England and the Vatican controlling our country, folks. But anyway... It advocated bringing socialism to the world in a slow, gradual stage. There's 2 kinds of communism, evolutionary and revolutionary. Okay? We've seen Pol Pot, we've seen, you know, all the Marxist-Leninists over in Russia, what they can do. So basically, this is a different form of communism. It's socialism. It's evolutionary. It's a slow incrementalism so that the people, like when you put a frog in a pan, if you got the water on warm and slowly turn up the heat, the frog won't jump out until, you know, he won't even realize that the heat's getting up as you turn up the heat slowly. And that's what's happened in our country since the early 1900s. So let me get back to the definition of the Fabian Society. They often worked out of Oxford with the Oxford elite. So it's an elitist group, once again. Their common objective was to gain control of people's minds. Mind control is what we're talking about, brainwashing folks. And basically by controlling education. And we've talked about the National Education Association before. I won't go into a rant. We'll never get finished what we're done here. They wanted to control the education system and the news media. Folks, they have done it. And this is what they were going to do to introduce their socialist agenda. And, you know, as a little bit at a time so the people would not be shocked into a revolt. And we're trying to put it all in a nutshell to show you, say, look, feel the vibrations of this negative philosophy that's been put forth into our country that's really taking us down and taking away our ability to obtain wealth.
Absolutely is. So now, that's the basic history of the Fabian Society.
A history of it.
Well, not a
That's
history,
definition.
basic explanation of it, basic explanation. And one of the things, you know, that when they first were organized, it was called something else. Because they wanted to get politically involved and affect change, social changes in politics, they splintered off and formed what we have is this Fabian Society. And that is what their intent is to bring about social changes, covertly more so.
Yep.
And now from the history of the history of God's people and the coming New World Order, we've exposed this book before.
David J. Smith.
Absolutely.
Newswatch magazine. Good stuff, folks.
Very informative. He has a section here entitled Program of the Fabian Socialists. And it goes on to say, look what the congressional record uncovered by Cleo Skousen, thank you,
Cleo
for the
Skousen.
FBI, while as assistant to J. Edgar Hoover, planned complete destruction of the United States. And this is a congressional record. And it goes into actually 45 different planks of this plan. So we're going to go over a few of them.
We're going to talk about what their agenda was, and you'll see the things that have been implemented. You'll be, oh, well, isn't that already in our country? Well, this is back from, what, 1958, when he revealed this in Leon Skousen, is that his name? Or Cleon Skousen. In 1958, he revealed this in his book, Naked Communists. So let's roll with that, Buzzy.
Yeah, okay. For the first one, convince the U.S. to accept coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. This would give them free movement to spread international communism. And now that's kind of odd too, because when you think about it, where we are today, you know, if you do hear anything about Iran, it's going to be more so that you know, we're talking about nuking Iran because we don't have the military might as far as conventional troops to send in there and go to war with Iran. So, you know, right there is a real serious threat of our government. You know, we're the good guys. Keep that in mind of dropping some nukes on Iran. Wonder how they would, you know, the rest of the Arab world would respond to that. Number two, convince the U.S. to capitulate, give in preference to engaging in an atomic war. Well, you know, I got to tell you, it's kind of funny when you look at that one, because our president certainly doesn't seem to be going in that direction, even though the public and a lot of Congress seems to be going.
Well, they have to put us in so much debt and drain all of our finances and get us so disgusted with our country that we're willing to take something new in the future, you know? So this is all part of it.
Mm-hmm. Number three, demonstrate the illusion, mind you, that total disarmament by the U.S. would be a demonstration of moral strength.
I got a quote for you right here. Mikhail Gorbachev, okay, folks, former head of the communist dictatorship in Russia. He stated to the Politburo in November of 1987, here's a quote, check this out. Gentlemen, comrades, he said, do not be concerned about all you hear about glasnost and perestroika and democracy in the coming years. He says, they are primarily for outward consumption. That means the media is going to spin all this stuff and you're going to buy it. And it says, there will be no significant internal changes within the Soviet Union other than for cosmetic purposes. Our purpose is to disarm the Americans and let them fall asleep. Wake up! It fits perfect with that. Let's roll.
Absolutely. Number four, permit free trade.
Oh.
And what about the NAFTA treaty with Mexico and Canada between all nations, regardless whether the items could be used for war? Well, I got to tell you, you know, like we've said in the past show, you know, back in the late 80s, we armed Saddam Hussein, and then a couple years later, we went in and we took him out. So just keep these things in mind. Think of how many of these things that you actually see being implemented. Number five, extend long-term loans to Russia Soviet satellites that they would never pay back because they plan to bury us, just as my good buddy Silly Willy here just brought to your attention.
Yep.
Number six, provide the U.S., United States, foreign aid to all nations, thus draining the wealth of our nation and causing steady long-term inflation to debauch our currency.
Let's give it all away.
And, you know, that's
Good are you?
That's exactly what we're doing. You know, I read these a while ago. It's been a few weeks.
We've only got 10 minutes. Let's
Yeah,
roll.
okay, you know.
Get a taste of it.
And it's just like, yeah, I'm just like, yeah, exactly. There was a lot of different avenues. Number 7, grant recognition to Red China with admission to the United Nations, thus expelling nationalist China from organization.
Oh,
President Nixon copped that back in the early 70s.
Yeah.
You know, and look where China is today. Set up East and West Germany as separate states Then, near completion of the plan for world government, they would reunify Germany as an electrifying overture of peace, so America would disarm.
Imagine that.
Now, this was all back in 1958. This came out of the open, just like in the past we talked about Adam Weishoff's Illuminati plans to overthrow the French government. 1789 that took place. They discovered those plans 4 years earlier.